They called him the Beggar King. Knockabout wasn't just another kung fu movie, it was survival. Bones broke on camera, budgets vanished overnight, and one fight scene, they filmed it so many times the crew threatened to walk off set. These are 20 weird facts about Knockabout. And the bonus? Let's just say Sammo Hung's broken finger became the film's secret weapon. Get ready, this one hits hard. Before Sammo Hung stepped behind the camera, he wasn't supposed to direct Knockabout at all. The job was offered to another Hong Kong filmmaker, someone with more experience, more connections, and a safer track record. Golden Harvest wanted a proven name for their martial arts slate. But that director walked away 3 weeks before production. Creative differences, script disputes, money that didn't materialize fast enough. The studio panicked. They needed someone who could shoot fast, fight choreography expertise, and wouldn't ask too many questions about the shrinking budget. So they called Samo. He was still establishing himself as a director, hungry, relentless, and willing to take impossible jobs nobody else wanted. He'd acted in dozens of films, choreographed hundreds of fights, but directing a full feature under these conditions, that was different. No prep time, no safety net. Just a script, a cast, and a deadline that felt like a death sentence. Samo took one look at the mess and said yes anyway. Because in 1979, Hong Kong, you didn't wait for perfect conditions. You made the movie, or someone else did. And Samo wasn't about to let someone else tell his story. What should have been a disaster became his breakthrough. Not because everything went smoothly, because he refused to let it fall apart. Yuen Biao wasn't the first choice for the lead role. The studio wanted someone older, someone with more box office pull, someone audiences already recognized from Shaw Brothers hits. They had a list, names that carried weight, but every single one of them said no. Some because the script was too physical, others because the pay wasn't enough. A few just didn't trust the director who was still learning on the job. The casting office was desperate. Auditions ran for weeks. Dozens of martial artists came through. Some could fight but couldn't act. Others could act but moved like their joints were glued together. And then Yuen Biao walked in. He was young, hungry, and most importantly, trained at the China Drama Academy alongside Samo and Jackie Chan. They'd grown up together, bled together, broken bones in the same courtyard, practicing the same brutal forms. Samo watched him move through one sequence and made a decision on the spot. Forget the studio list, forget the safer choice. This kid had something nobody else brought: speed, grace, and the kind of fearless physicality that made you forget you were watching choreography. Yuen Biao got the part not because he campaigned for it. He got it because when Samo said jump off that roof, he didn't ask how high. He just jumped. And that trust, that history, became the backbone of the entire film. Number 3. The opening fight sequence wasn't planned to be that brutal. On paper, it looked simple. 2 con artists, a quick scuffle, establish the tone, move on. But when they started shooting, something shifted. Sammo Hung didn't want it safe. He wanted it raw, real. The kind of fight that left marks. So instead of pulling punches for the camera, he told the stunt team to commit. Full contact. No safety pads for the wide shots. If someone got clipped, they got clipped. Yuen Biao took a knee to the ribs in take 4. Samo caught an elbow to the jaw in take 7. The crew thought they'd reset, regroup, maybe pad up for the next round. But Samo just shook it off and called for another take. They filmed that sequence 19 times. Not because anyone messed up the choreography, because Samo kept pushing for something harder, faster, more desperate. The stunt coordinator finally stepped in after someone's nose started bleeding and asked if this was really necessary. Samo looked at him and said, "If the audience doesn't feel it, we didn't do our job." So they kept going. By the time they got the shot Samo wanted, everyone on set was limping, bruised, exhausted. But when they watched the playback, nobody argued. What looked like movie magic was just pain that refused to quit. And that became the DNA of Knockabout. Not the fight scenes you rehearse, the ones you survive. Number 4. The beggar character almost didn't make it into the final cut. After weeks of shooting, the studio looked at the rough assembly and panicked. They said the Beggar King was too weird, too theatrical, too much. Audiences wouldn't connect with a filthy con artist who steals chickens and sleeps in trash. They wanted Samo to reshoot those scenes with a cleaner, more sympathetic character, someone audiences could root for without cringing. Samo refused. He fought for it in every meeting, every screening, every conversation with producers who held the money. He told them the beggar wasn't just comic relief. He was the heart of the story, the moral center disguised as trash. The audience needed to see poverty, desperation, survival, not sanitized and safe, but lived in. The studio didn't budge. They wanted cuts, so Samo made a deal. Give me one test screening with real audiences, not executives. If they hate him, I'll reshoot everything. If they love him, you leave it alone. The screening happened in a small theater in Kowloon. Working class crowd, people who understood struggle. And when the beggar appeared on screen, filthy, scheming, brilliant, the room erupted in laughter. Not polite chuckles, real, gut-level howls. The kind of laughter that spreads like wildfire. The studio watched from the back of the theater and didn't say another word. The beggar king stayed exactly as Samo imagined him. Dirty, dangerous, and unforgettable. Number 5. Leung Kar-yan broke his hand during the final fight sequence, and nobody noticed for 3 days. It happened during a rooftop chase scene. He landed wrong coming off a jump, felt something crack, but the adrenaline was pumping and the cameras were rolling, so he just kept going. He finished the take. Then another. Then another. By the time they wrapped for the day, his hand had swollen to twice its normal size. He didn't tell anyone. In 1979 Hong Kong cinema, injuries meant delays. Delays meant budget overruns. And budget overruns meant you might not work again. So, Leung wrapped his hand in cloth, hid it under his costume sleeve, and showed up the next morning ready to shoot. For the next 3 days, he fought through scenes that required grabbing, punching, gripping weapons, all with a fractured metacarpal that screamed every time he moved. The only person who noticed something was wrong was Samo. He watched Leung favor his left hand during a sword sequence and pulled him aside. Leung swore he was fine. Samo didn't believe him, but also didn't have time to argue. They had 4 more fight scenes to shoot before losing their location. So, they adjusted, choreographed around the injury, gave him moves that relied on kicks and elbows instead of grabs and punches. And somehow, through pain and stubbornness, Leung finished his scenes. When the production finally wrapped, he went to the hospital, fractured in 2 places, required surgery and 6 weeks recovery. But the film was done, and in his mind, that's all that mattered. The marketplace fight scene was supposed to take 2 days to shoot. It took 11. Not because of the choreography, but because the location kept falling apart. They built the set in an actual outdoor market in Kowloon, with permission from local vendors who cleared out their stalls for the production. The plan was simple: shoot fast, shoot clean, get out before the daily crowds returned. But Hong Kong weather had other ideas. Day 1, torrential rain, set flooded, lost the day. Day 2, wind knocked over scaffolding, lost the day. Day 3, finally shooting, until a vendor showed up claiming nobody told him about the film and started screaming at the crew. Lost half the day negotiating. By day 4, the budget was hemorrhaging. The producers wanted to move to a studio lot, build the market from scratch under controlled conditions. Samo said no. He needed real textures, real light, real chaos, so they pushed forward. Days 5 through 9, they filmed in pieces. Early mornings before merchants arrived, late nights after they left, stealing moments between rainstorms and equipment malfunctions. The stunt team worked 16-hour days. Tempers flared. Someone threw a chair. Someone else threatened to quit. And through it all, Samo kept directing, kept fighting, kept pushing. By day 11, they finally had enough footage. The scene lasted barely 4 minutes in the final cut. But those 4 minutes felt alive, messy, dangerous. Because it wasn't a movie set trying to look like a market. It was a market that survived a movie. Sammo Hung directed the entire film with a broken finger. It happened during week 2 of production. He was demonstrating a fall sequence for one of the stunt performers, trying to show the exact angle needed to make the impact look devastating without actually destroying someone's spine. He landed hard, felt his pinky finger snap backward. The pain shot up his arm like lightning. The medic on set wanted to take him to the hospital immediately. Samo looked at the schedule, looked at the crew standing around waiting, looked at the sun dropping toward the horizon and said, "Tape it." They wrapped his finger to the one next to it with medical tape and athletic wrap, immobilized it as best they could, and Samo went right back to work. For the next 5 weeks, he directed every scene, choreographed every fight, demonstrated every stunt with a broken finger throbbing underneath layers of tape. He couldn't grip properly, couldn't gesture with his right hand the way he normally would. So he adapted, used his left hand more, pointed with his elbow, communicated through demonstration and intensity instead of fine motor control. The crew never said anything, but they noticed. Noticed how he winced when someone bumped his hand. Noticed how he favored his left side during fight demos. And somehow, that injury became a strange kind of inspiration. Because if Samo could direct with a broken finger, refusing to stop, refusing to slow down, then nobody else had an excuse to quit either. Pain was just part of the job. And the job was making the movie. Number 8. The training montage wasn't originally in the script. Samo added it during production because he realized audiences needed to understand the transformation. You couldn't just jump from humiliated student to revenge-seeking warrior without showing the brutal path between. But they had no time to shoot it properly. The schedule was already overloaded, the budget already stretched, as Samo did what he always did. He improvised. They stole half days from other shooting blocks, grabbed an hour here and 2 hours there, in between scheduled scenes. Shot the training sequences in fragments across 3 different weeks in 4 different locations. A temple courtyard, an abandoned warehouse, a hillside outside the city, a parking garage at dawn. The continuity was a nightmare. The lighting changed between shots. The weather shifted from sun to rain to overcast and back. The editor later said, cutting that montage together felt like assembling a puzzle with pieces from 6 different boxes. But somehow, impossibly, it worked. Because the chaos of the production matched the chaos of the training itself. The desperation to make it work, to force the pieces together, to refuse to accept failure, that desperation bled through the screen. When audiences watched that montage, they weren't seeing a polished Hollywood training sequence. They were seeing someone learning to fight the same way the film learned to exist, through persistence, through pain, through refusing to stop until something finally clicked. The scene was never supposed to exist, but it became the emotional core of the entire movie. One of the film's most iconic weapons, the 3-section staff, was completely improvised on set. The original script called for traditional kung fu weapons, swords, spears, the usual arsenal you'd find in any Golden Harvest production. But 2 days before shooting the monastery fight sequence, the props department lost half their inventory. Some said it was theft, others said careless storage. Either way, the weapons were gone, and there was no time to remake them. Samo was furious. They had a massive fight scene scheduled, dozens of stunt performers ready to go, and suddenly no weapons to fight with. The props master scrambled, pulling together whatever he could find. Broken broomsticks, pieces of bamboo, random metal rods from the construction site next door. And then someone found 3 sections of bamboo connected by chains, something a maintenance worker had rigged together for some forgotten purpose. Samo picked it up, swung it once, twice, and his eyes lit up. He'd trained with 3-section staffs as a kid, but they were rare in films, too dangerous, too unpredictable, too easy to hit yourself in the face if you miscalculated. But Samo didn't care about safe. He spent the next 2 hours working out choreography around this improvised weapon, making it central to the entire fight. Watching the footage back, you'd never know it was an accident. The 3-section staff became Knockabout's signature visual, copied in dozens of films afterward, all because someone lost the real weapons and Sammo Hung turned a disaster into something legendary. By week 4 of production, Sammo Hung was sleeping 3 hours a night and surviving on nothing but tea and cigarettes. The schedule was brutal, directing, choreographing, performing, problem-solving, all while hemorrhaging money and racing against location permits that expired faster than they could shoot. The crew started noticing he'd zone out mid-conversation, eyes unfocused, somewhere else entirely. Then he'd snap back, give 15 precise directions to 5 different departments, and disappear to the next crisis. His assistant director finally pulled him aside and said, "You're gonna collapse." Sammo shrugged. "Then I collapse after we finish." But it wasn't sustainable. Mistakes started happening. A stunt went wrong because Sammo miscalculated timing. An actor showed up to the wrong location because Sammo forgot to update the call sheet. A camera angle was set up incorrectly because Sammo approved it while half asleep. Small things. But in film production, small things compound. The producers threatened to pull the plug if he didn't get rest. So Sammo made a deal. Give him 1 full day off, he'd recharge, come back sharp. They agreed. He slept for 18 hours straight, woke up, ate a full meal for the first time in weeks, and returned to set like a different person. Focused, energized, dangerous. From that moment forward, the production ran smoother. Not because the challenges disappeared, because Sammo finally had enough energy to outwork them. Sometimes the most important fight scene is the one where you stop fighting yourself. The final rooftop confrontation almost killed 2 people, not because of the height, because of the rain. The scene was scheduled for a dry afternoon, clear skies, perfect conditions for high-altitude wire work. But Hong Kong weather doesn't care about shooting schedules. 20 minutes before cameras rolled, the sky opened up. Not a drizzle, a downpour. The producers wanted to reschedule. Sammo refused. They were losing their location the next day, and the rooftop was central to the film's climax. So, they made a decision that would never fly today. Shoot it anyway. The roof became a skating rink. Stunt performers slipped during rehearsal. The safety coordinator warned that wet surfaces made the wire rigs unpredictable, but Sammo had already committed. They reduced the height of some jumps, added extra support wires, slowed down certain movements, but they filmed it in the rain. During take 6, Yuen Biao's foot slipped mid-jump. He twisted in the air, caught the wire wrong, and slammed shoulder first into a concrete wall. Everyone froze. Medics rushed over. Biao was winded, bruised, but nothing broken. After 5 minutes, he stood up and said, "Again." They finished the scene in 12 takes. The rain made everything more dangerous, more unpredictable. But on screen, it looked biblical, like heaven itself was trying to stop the fight. Sometimes the worst conditions create the best cinema. Knockabout's ending was completely reshot 6 weeks after production wrapped. The original finale had the hero walking away, victorious but alone. A bittersweet meditation on revenge and emptiness. Samo loved it. The studio hated it. Test audiences in Hong Kong were confused, deflated. They'd spent 90 minutes watching this kid get beaten, train, transform, and finally overcome his enemy. They wanted catharsis, not philosophy. The studio demanded reshoots. Samo refused. They went back and forth for weeks until Golden Harvest made it simple. Reshoot the ending or we don't release the film. Sammo had no leverage, no final cut privileges. So he agreed, but on his terms. They brought back the core cast, rebuilt the temple set, and shot a new ending where master and student reconcile. It added hope, it added warmth. It gave audiences the emotional release they craved. When the new version tested, the numbers doubled. People left theaters smiling instead of contemplating. Sammo admitted years later he was wrong about the original ending. Not because it was bad filmmaking, because he forgot who he was making the movie for. The art mattered, but so did the audience. And sometimes giving people what they need means letting go of what you want. That compromise saved Knockabout from obscurity. The film's iconic beggar costume was never washed during the entire production. Not once. It started relatively clean, dirty by design, but still manageable. By week 2, it reeked. By week 4, crew members wouldn't stand downwind of Sammo during breaks. The smell became legendary on set. Part sweat, part dirt, part whatever mysterious substances accumulated during outdoor shoots in Hong Kong summer heat. Sammo wore it almost every day for 7 weeks straight. The wardrobe department offered to clean it. He said no. He wanted the costume to age naturally, to accumulate real grime, real history, method acting through wardrobe. The other actors complained. Some refused to do close contact scenes without nose plugs. Samo didn't care. He believed the audience could somehow sense authenticity even through a screen. Even through smell, they'd never actually experience. And weirdly, he might have been right. Because when you watch Knockabout, that beggar doesn't look like an actor in a costume. He looks like he's lived in those rags for years, like the dirt is part of his skin. After filming Wrapped, the costume was so rank they couldn't donate it or reuse it. The wardrobe supervisor wanted to burn it. Instead, Samo took it home, put it in a sealed bag, and kept it as a reminder, not of the film, of what he was willing to endure to make it real. Jackie Chan visited the set 3 times, and each visit turned into an impromptu competition. Chan and Samo had trained together since childhood, brothers in everything but blood. They pushed each other relentlessly, constantly trying to outdo one another. When Jackie showed up during the marketplace fight shoot, he watched for 10 minutes, then grabbed a prop and demonstrated a different way to execute a falling sequence. Samo watched, then showed Jackie his version. Faster, more dangerous. Within minutes, they were both executing increasingly insane stunts, each one raising the bar higher. The crew stopped filming to watch. What started as friendly advice turned into a 2-man exhibition of physics-defying martial arts. On Jackie's second visit, he arrived during a wire work sequence. Same thing happened. He suggested an adjustment. Samo countered. Soon they were both flying through the air, spinning, flipping, trying to one-up each other. By the third visit, the crew knew the routine. The moment Jackie walked on set, they'd place bets on who would attempt the crazier stunt. Neither one ever backed down. Years later, Samo said those impromptu battles made him a better director. Because Jackie forced him to think bigger, to push harder, to never settle for good enough. Competition between friends, when rooted in respect, doesn't tear people apart. It elevates everyone. The snake scene wasn't performed by trained animals. They were wild, captured 3 days before, shooting from somewhere outside Kowloon. The animal wrangler assured everyone they were non-venomous, docile, safe for film work. He lied about at least 2 of those things. When they released the snakes for the scene, they didn't behave like movie snakes. They didn't slither on cue or stay in their marks. They scattered, fast. One headed straight for the camera crew. Another disappeared into the rafters. A third wrapped around a light stand and refused to let go. The actors froze. Yuen Biao, who was supposed to react with fear in the scene, didn't have to act. His terror was real. The wrangler scrambled to recapture them, but it took over an hour. During that hour, production completely stopped. Nobody wanted to move. Nobody wanted to accidentally step on or provoke a snake they couldn't see. When they finally corralled most of them, Samo made a decision. They'd do 1 take. Just one, no rehearsal. The actors would react authentically because the snakes were genuinely unpredictable. They rolled camera, released the snakes again, and captured something raw, unrehearsable. The fear on screen was real. The chaos was real. After that single take, Samo called it, sent the snakes back to wherever they came from, and vowed never to work with reptiles again. Some authenticity costs too much. Knockabout was rejected by American distributors 7 times before anyone picked it up. The studios watched it and didn't know what to do with it. Too violent for family audiences, too comedic for action purists, too Chinese for mainstream American theaters. One distributor reportedly said, "It's well made, but there's no market for this." Another suggested dubbing it completely, changing character names, removing cultural references, making it more accessible. Samo refused. Golden Harvest refused. They believed the film would find its audience eventually. It took 3 years. Finally, a small independent distributor took a chance on the midnight movie circuit, college towns, art house theaters, places where audiences crave something different from the polished Hollywood machine. And slowly, quietly, Knockabout built a cult following. Martial arts enthusiasts traveled hours to catch screenings. Film students studied the choreography. Word spread through underground channels, martial arts magazines, bootleg VHS networks. By the mid-1980s, it became one of those films people discovered through whispered recommendations. You haven't seen Knockabout? You have to see Knockabout. It never got a wide theatrical release in America. Never made Hollywood money. But it earned something more valuable: respect. The distributors who rejected it watched from the sidelines as Knockabout became influential without them. Sometimes the market isn't ready, and sometimes you just have to wait for the market to catch up. The film's score was composed in 6 days by a musician who'd never scored a martial arts film before. The original composer quit 2 weeks before the final mix, citing creative differences that were really just budget disputes. Golden Harvest panicked. Sound mixing was scheduled. The release date was locked. They needed music immediately. Someone recommended a young composer named Frankie Chan, who'd done television work, but nothing this ambitious. He took the job knowing it was impossible. 6 days to compose, record, and deliver a full orchestral score for a 90-minute action film. Most composers get 6 months. Chan worked around the clock. He watched the rough cut on repeat, absorbing rhythms, timing, emotional beats. He composed directly to picture, matching music to movement with almost no time for revision. He borrowed musicians from other projects, called in favors, assembled a makeshift orchestra in a cramped recording studio. They recorded everything in 2 marathon sessions, 18 hours straight. The player's sight read charts Chan had finished writing that morning. Some cues were recorded once, no second takes, no time. By day 6, Chan delivered the complete score, mixed and mastered. When Samo heard it, he was stunned. Not just because it was good, because it was perfect. The music elevated scenes he'd thought were already finished. It added emotion he didn't know was missing. Chan went on to become one of Hong Kong cinema's most respected composers. Knockabout was his breakthrough. During the monastery fight sequence, a stunt performer accidentally knocked himself unconscious. He was supposed to take a scripted hit, spin backward, and fall. Simple choreography. But during take 4, something went wrong. He spun too fast, lost his spatial awareness, and his head connected with a stone pillar nobody had padded. The sound echoed through the temple. Everyone heard it, a sickening thud. He dropped instantly. The medic rushed over. The stunt performer was out cold for nearly a minute before coming to, confused about where he was. They called an ambulance, rushed him to the hospital. Concussion, severe bruising. He was done for the week. The sequence was only half finished, and they'd already lost their location permit. Samo couldn't reschedule, so he did what directors do when the impossible happens. He reblocked the entire fight around the missing performer, redistributed his moves to other stunt players, changed camera angles to hide the gap, worked through lunch, through dinner, through exhaustion to salvage the scene. When the injured performer returned a week later, he watched the finished sequence and couldn't tell where his absence had been written around. That's the invisible work of filmmaking. The problems no audience ever sees, the solutions that look effortless but cost everything. The stunt performer healed completely, but the scar on the pillar remained for years. Sammo Hung shot Knockabout without a script supervisor for most of production. The original quit after 2 weeks, unable to handle the chaos, the constant improvisation. Nobody replaced her. They just kept shooting. The result was a continuity disaster. Costumes changed between shots, props appeared and vanished. Background extras wore different clothes in sequential scenes. The editor later called cutting Knockabout, solving a Rubik's Cube blindfolded. Scenes shot weeks apart had to connect seamlessly, but nothing matched. Different lighting, different wardrobe, different hair lengths. They fixed what they could in post. Digital fixes weren't an option in 1979, so they used clever editing, strategic cuts, tight framing. Some errors made the final cut. Film scholars cataloged them. Dedicated fans spot them on rewatches, but casual audiences never noticed. The energy was too relentless, the action too engaging. Nobody cared if a shirt changed color between punches. Momentum matters more than perfection, and Samo knew it. When Knockabout premiered in Hong Kong, the opening night screening erupted into chaos, not criticism, celebration. The crowd was so loud, so energized, that dialogue was frequently drowned out by cheers. Every major fight sequence stopped the movie. Audiences screamed, applauded, demanded instant replays that obviously couldn't happen. In the back of the theater, Sammo Hung watched anonymously. He'd been terrified the film wouldn't land, that months of suffering would amount to nothing. But as the Beggar King appeared on screen, filthy and scheming, the theater roared with laughter. When the training montage began, people leaned forward, completely absorbed. During the final fight, Strangers grabbed each other's arms, gasped, shouted warnings at the screen like the characters could hear them. This wasn't polite moviegoing. This was communal experience. When the credits rolled, the applause lasted 3 full minutes. People stayed in their seats, still buzzing, still processing. Some stayed for the second showing. Samo slipped out before anyone recognized him, walked into the Hong Kong night, and cried. Not from sadness, from relief, from vindication. Because every broken bone, every sleepless night, every compromise and fight and moment of doubt had been worth it. The film worked, not because it was perfect, because it was alive. And that night, in that theater, Knockabout proved something Samo always believed. Audiences don't want polish, they want truth, even if that truth is wrapped in kung fu and chaos. Scent. After Knockabout wrapped, Sammo Hung kept one prop from the entire production. Not the 3-section staff, not a costume piece, not a call sheet signed by the cast. He kept a small wooden bowl the beggar used in the opening scenes to collect coins. Completely unremarkable, cheap, probably cost 50 cents. But to Samo, it represented everything the film meant. The bowl was a symbol of survival, of scraping by, of refusing to give up even when you have nothing. Years later, he kept it on his desk while developing new projects. Whenever a production got difficult, whenever budgets collapsed or actors quit, or studios demanded impossible compromises, he'd look at that bowl and remember Knockabout. Remember that the best work often comes from the worst circumstances, that limitations breed creativity, that sometimes you have to beg for every frame, every moment, every chance. The bowl wasn't valuable, but it was priceless. Because it reminded him that he'd survived the impossible once, which meant he could do it again, and again, and again. In Hong Kong cinema, survival isn't about talent, it's about refusing to stay down. That wooden bowl sits in Sammo Hung's office to this day, a quiet monument to the film that almost broke him, but instead made him unstoppable.